today's reading. If we look back in time, go back with me for a minute, maybe you can picture this, back in the 1950s, so to speak. And if you walked into a kitchen of that time, what are things that you might see in that kitchen? You would probably, pretty basic stuff. You might have some pots and some pans. Maybe some utensils like a whisk or a spatula, maybe a ladle, something of that nature. Oven, refrigerator. And that's pretty much it, right? Right? That was about all there was back then. Now, come forward 60 years, modern times, and we look in our kitchens of today. Now, what do you see? Let's see, we got a toaster, we got coffee maker, dishwasher, microwave, bread maker, blenders.
Refrigerator will crush your ice.
A what? Say that again?
Refrigerator will crush your ice.
Refrigerator that'll crush your ice. Oh, the modern conveniences. What am I leaving out? Anything?
Washer and dryer.
Trash I don't have a trash compactor. What now? Washer and dryer. That's not in the kitchen though. But modern.
It's in my house.
Okay, good point. I didn't think that far ahead. But all those modern conveniences that we have. Now, if we go back to the 1950s, those kitchens, those simple kitchens, seemed to produce some great meals, didn't they? There's some baked chicken, mashed potatoes, not the instant kind, the real mashed potatoes. You remember before they had them in a box. The real ones where you would actually boil the potatoes and make them, right? I mean, green beans, lima beans, depends on where you're from. Biscuits or some bread, fresh baked bread. And if you were lucky for dessert, you might have an apple pie or something like that, or a fresh cake or something of that nature. Those simple little kitchens produced all that. Now, coming forward to our modern kitchen, and all those conveniences with the crushed ice and the trash compactor and the blender, the toaster, all that stuff. And the best we can do is a microwavable pizza someday. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? But we like our conveniences, don't we? We like for life to be convenient, don't we? I like a convenient life. We like it easy. And the more things we can do to make it easy, the more we like it. We like convenience. But life isn't always convenient, is it? As a matter of fact, more times than not, it's inconvenience, right? There's a lot of things that make life a little inconvenient for you. Sometimes you have to wait in lines. That's not convenient. I don't want to wait. I want to be at the front. Right? Don't you? That's inconvenient. Right? Sometimes, you go to McDonald's, you have to wait 2 or 3 minutes for a meal. What? Serious? That's inconvenient. I had only allotted 1 minute. I wanted my meal then. There are things in life that go on and makes life kind of inconvenient, right? Different areas of our life. All areas of our life get inconvenient at times, right? Even our faith. Sometimes we get in life situations where our faith can become inconvenient, right? When your boss asks you to lie, or you lose your job, your faith might be a little inconvenient, right? When you're around a group of friends and they're gossiping, your faith might be a little inconvenient. When you hear the boys talking about going out tonight, having a few drinks, and hitting the strip club afterwards, your life might be a little inconvenient. Your faith might be a little inconvenient to you. Because it just doesn't fit in with what the world wants and what the world says and what the path the world would have you go down. It creates a tension between that path that the world would set for you and the path that God has set for you, right? And so that tension makes your life inconvenient. Because you know what you should do, but you know what the world's calling you to do. The world's calling you into those dangerous places. Slowly but surely, working your way from the path that you should be on. Right? And so at times our faith does become somewhat inconvenient. And that's what we've been talking about here in the last few weeks, is about when life starts pulling you towards those danger zones, right? Those dangerous areas where it may compromise your moral beliefs, your ethical beliefs. Things that you know to be right, things you know to be wrong. And how do we separate them and stay from crossing into that danger zone? And we talk about setting up guardrails. And guardrails were systems designed to keep us in safe areas on the highways. But we're going to set those up in our personal lives, personal standards of behavior that we incorporated into our consciousness. So when we started getting towards areas that were dangerous, it would bounce us back onto the right track, right? Guardrails. But today we're not going to talk about what areas you need to build guardrails, because you know it's a personal thing. Excuse me. Each of us have different areas that we need guardrails in our life. What needs to be a guardrail for me may be a straight road for you, and it really may not even be an option to go back. So maybe you don't need that guardrail, and maybe I do. So it's a personal thing, right? It's a personal standard. But the guardrails are just part of it. You see, the big question today isn't really about, do you have guardrails, or is there a need for guardrails? Because certainly there is. But what is the resolve of those guardrails? Do we have the resolve to honor those guardrails when we encounter those inconveniences in life? Those times that we're not on our A game, those times when we have that tension between us and those people around us, what they have us do and what God would have us to do. How do we react to that guardrail? Is that guardrail made of tissue on popsicle sticks, anchored in pudding? Is that your guardrail? Something you just crash right through? It shouldn't be. That guardrail needs to be made of steel. Bolted to steel, buried in the ground, anchored in concrete. Something that's going to bounce you back, not let you crash through, because that's the whole purpose of a guardrail. But we have to have that resolve. We have to have that determination that that's what it's going to be in our life. That's a plan. And we all have plans, right? Right? Don't you have a plan not to get into trouble? Because if you don't, you fail to plan. You know, nobody plans on messing up their life. But people who get in trouble are people who don't plan not to mess up their life, right? We need to have a plan. But everybody has a plan, but it was once said that, you know, everybody has a plan. Every fighter has a plan until he gets punched in the mouth. And that's very true. Every fighter has a plan in the ring, in the street, until he gets punched in the mouth. And everything changes, right? It all changes. If you've been in a fight, let me tell you, you get punched in the face, it's all crazy then. You know, it's all butter, right? There is no plan anymore. So everybody has a plan, but what's your resolve? When you get knocked down, when the world comes at you and knocks you to the ground, what's your resolve? What's your level of commitment? What's your level of determination to stay true to your guardrails, to stay true to your God? And that's where we find Daniel and his friends today in today's scripture. Because Daniel, let me give you a little history of what's going on here. Nebuchadnezzar was the king. And Nebuchadnezzar was a very brilliant man. And he had this idea that instead of conquering cities and destroying them and knocking them down, what he would do is he would go in and conquer the city. But instead of enslaving everybody, he would take the gold and such, but he would only enslave the brightest, the prettiest, the smartest people in the city. And he would bring them back to his city of Babylon, and he would re-educate them. He would change their culture to where they adapted the culture of the Babylon people. So his city, in this ancient time, was filled with the brightest, the prettiest, the smartest people in the area. It was an attractive place to be. And sometimes he'd even send them back out to spread the culture other places. So in 605 BC, that's what he did. He sent his troops to Jerusalem, and they invaded and took the city. not completely, but did a good job on the temple that Solomon had built, looted all the gold, and took the brightest and the smartest, the best looking. See, I'm a safe. All those cats, I've been left behind. I don't know about you. But anyway, get back to it. But they took them back to the city. And that, in that group, or in that entourage, was Daniel, and Hananiah, Mishael, and Ezra. They're all going back. Now, these were people who probably had lived up to this point a pretty good life. You know, had probably been in royal families or privileged families. And life had been pretty good. But at this point, you could say they had just got hit in the mouth. Right? The world had just punched them and they had just been knocked down. Because their whole world had just changed. And everything that was no more. They were now slaves. They knew not what their future held. They knew only that they were enslaved and they were going, being taken to a city far away. They didn't know what was going to be there when they got there. They didn't know if they'd be working in salt mines. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know what was going to do. And things had changed. Right? You ever been there where you thought you had it figured out, all of a sudden somebody punched you in the mouth and the world knocked you down and you're like, I don't know what's going on now. I don't know where I'm going to turn, I don't know what I'm going to do. You ever been there? I've been there. You know, sometimes it just hits you from the side. You don't even see it coming. Right? But we all get knocked down at some point in our life. Well, that's what these boys are. Young men, teenagers probably, about that age, and going to this city. But when they get there, they get a pleasant surprise. They're not going to be working in the salt mines. Yeah. They've been selected to be a part of this training program. And they're going to go and be educated by some of the wisest people. And basically what they're going to do, it's like getting your master's degree. It's something like a master's doctorate. You're going to get more education than you've ever had. These are already educated, smart guys. But they're going to get more education. And it's free. It's free. And they get to eat from the king's table. The good food. I mean, the stuff the king eats. That's like having somebody pay for your master's degree and getting to go eat at the chancellor's house every night. That's good stuff, right? It's like, that's appealing. I mean, that's, all right, cool, that's good, I'm in, you know. But they get there and that's where they're at. And that's where we find Daniel today. But what's interesting about Daniel is he kind of sees what's going on. He kind of understands. They come in, they've changed his name. And slowly but surely, what they're trying to do is change him. Right? They're trying to change his culture. They're trying to change who he is to what they want him to be. Right? Kind of like what the world does to us at times, right? It wants to change you from being a godly person, a person with strong beliefs, a person who has morals and ethics, and they want to pull you into the danger zone. They want to pull you into, oh, come on over here. This is fun. This is good. You're going to have a good time. Come on. It's safe. It's all right. Just a little bit. It's kind of like, I'll just listen to the gossip. I won't actually spread it. That's how it starts out, right? I just listen, and the next thing, I'm just going to tell one person. Because that's good news. I mean, that was good stuff. And then pretty soon you're on the phone with everybody you know. Did you hear? Did you hear about Mindy? Let me tell you. You know, that's how it starts. It only takes, I'll just sit there and listen to it. You know, or the cashier gives you too much money back at the grocery store. What do you do ethically? What do you do morally? That's an extra $2. That's an extra $5. It's a big company. They're not going to miss it. They probably cheated me out of that somewhere in the past. I just put that in my pocket. Or do you go back and give it to them? You know, it's a small decision. It's not much money. It's a couple of dollars. Nobody's going to miss that. Right? Slowly but surely, they change you, don't they? You see, you know, here's the deal. If you cheat once, the second time's easy. If you lie once, second, third time, piece of cake. You know, as you slowly and surely change into what the world wants you to be, you slowly take on those behaviors that aren't what God would have you to be. They become easy. You take on a bad habit, you know, you pick something up. I'm not preaching against smoking, but you remember when the first time you ever smoked a cigarette? First one was terrible, but the second one wasn't too bad. And the third one got even better. And by the fourth and fifth one, I feel like I need another pack. You know, that's how it starts. It's one smoke at a time, one act at a time. You see what I'm saying? We slowly compromise from what God would have us to be to what the world would have us to be. Right? Slowly, it doesn't happen. We don't take that big jump. I'll just have a drink with the boys. I'll go home when they go to the club. All right, I'll just hang out. I won't even drink. I'm just going to be in the company because I want to be one of the guys. I want to be accepted, right? Those little actions. Are we thinking? Do we have our eyes wide open? Are we looking to see what we're doing? You see, because Daniel didn't know when he asked them not to give him food. He didn't know how this story was going to end. He hadn't read the book of Daniel. It hadn't been written yet. He didn't have that knowledge. You know, he didn't know how the story was going to end. But he had his eyes wide open. He could see what was happening, and he could see how that story was going to end if he didn't do something. Right? If he didn't make some changes. You know, it's kind of like if the girl's flirting with you at the water fountain, you don't know how that story's going to end. But if you're not careful and you don't make some changes, you know, like we talked about before, bring water in a bottle so you don't have to go to the water fountain anymore. You know, just stay away from those things if you're a married person. You know, you have to make those adjustments. You have to be aware of your surroundings, what's going on, right? And make changes. That's what Daniel says. He says, you know, let us eat our food. We don't want to defile ourselves with this food. Now, you have to understand something. That was a pretty bold move. Here he is. They're in a strange land. Not basically, they are in a strange land. They are slaves, or prisoners, or servants. And even though they're getting this free education, they've been offered this deal of a lifetime, they're still at the mercy of the king and his men. And yet he says, don't make me defile myself with that food, the food that's good enough for the king, the king's food, the food off the king's table that the king has ordered us to eat. Don't make me defile myself. Now, that's a pretty strong word, defile myself. Don't make me defile. Don't you think that was kind of a slap to the king? A slap in the face? You know, what do you think their response was? Like, whoa, cowboy? There are people out in the street starving, and you're turning down food off the king's table. You know, you need to check yourself. You know, that might have probably been the more appropriate response that they would have given, right? But no, he took that chance because he knew he had to make a stand, right? He realized that compromising in the face of tension, when you have that tension about what the world wants and what God wants, and you have to make a choice, and when you compromise, that it doesn't do away with that tension. All it does is it weakens your resolve to stand in what you believe. Right? It doesn't, if we're playing tug of war, and you have one end of the rope and I have one end of the rope, me stepping towards you doesn't loosen that tension. It just weakens my position. Correct? You've all played tug of war. Object gets to pull somebody towards the middle, right? So if I keep doing this, and I keep doing this, pretty soon I'm sitting in your lap, right? And you've won. It's weakened my resolve on my position to compromise with what God wants and what the world wants. It doesn't do away with the temptation. It doesn't do away with the tension. It just weakens you. It just weakens your position. You see that? And Daniel knew that. He didn't know how the story was going to end, but he knew how it was going to end if he didn't do something. Was it convenient for him to do this? No. You think it was easy for him to do this? No. The Bible said he resolved. In other words, he made up his mind. He determined for himself that this was going to be how it was going to be, regardless of the consequences, regardless of whether he was popular or friends with anybody. This is what he was going to do, because he was not going to let the Babylons change him into one of them. He was going to hold steadfast to his God and his beliefs and the one he had faith in throughout his life. Are you Daniel? Is that how you feel? It doesn't matter what temptation comes. It doesn't matter who punches me in the mouth. I'm going to stand firm. I have my guardrail up, and I don't care if it's convenient or inconvenient. I'm going to stand my ground. And if I'm not popular, so be it. And if I'm not one of the guys, okay. And if they don't invite me to hear all the gossip, I'm okay with that. Because it's just gossip anyway. It's just a story. You want to know a good story, pick up the Bible and read a story in there. There's plenty in there. You want to go tell a friend, tell them about that. Tell them about the story you read in the Bible. There's all kinds of juicy stuff. Just read the Old Testament. There's good stuff. There's all kinds of womanizing and all kinds of stuff. Just read it. You can gossip for days. See, the question is today that we have to ask ourselves is, do we have that kind of resolve? Do we have that kind of resolve that was demonstrated by Daniel when he said, no, just give me vegetables and water. I don't need that other stuff. I'll be fine. You're not going to change me. Do we have that kind of resolve? Or do we just go to whatever's convenient? It's easier just to go along. It really is. I mean, when people just start gossiping, it's easier just to sit there and listen. Or instead of trying to change the subject. Right? Isn't that true? Seriously? It's a cashier gives you extra money, it's easier just to keep walking out the door and go home. It's just easier. I have to turn around and go back through those doors and hand them the money and explain to them why I'm giving them the money. And then they're going to say, well, I don't know if I gave you too much money. And it's going to take up more of my time. It's not convenient. Just take the convenient route. Just take the convenient route. It's the easy way. Life's not convenient. Newsflash. Life's not easy. Yes, we filled with tough choices. And life will get inconvenient at times. But the challenge I have for you today is to be like David. To stand firm in what you believe in a world that's going to try to pull you towards the darkness over that edge. And will try to pull you there every day. Slowly but surely, eroding your resistance until you're there. Be smart. You're as smart as Daniel. Keep your eyes wide open. Look for the danger. Create the guardrail. Have the resolve to stay away from it. Stay on the path. Is it always convenient? No. But I can guarantee you this. It is worth every day the inconvenience of following an awesome God. Every day. The inconvenience is worth it. And all God's people said, Amen.